Okay, we are live and you can start the meeting. I'm going to let everyone else in the waiting room now too.
Could I be intrusive and just ask that we check Scott's audio and make sure that it works?
Can you all hear me now?
Loud and clear.
All right,
Sorry
thanks.
about that. Never
No
had
problem.
that kind of technical difficulty on Zoom. My apologies.
I blame the city Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's not doing great. Thanks all.
Okay, we're set to go. Kevin, do you want to start?
So Audrey, if you want to just officially open the meeting and then I can provide some introductory remarks.
Call this meeting to order this evening, starting with a study session at 6:05 p.m.
Thank you, Chair Say. I'm Kevin Gardner, Community Development Director with the City of Burlingame, and this first item on tonight's agenda is a study session on the North Rollins Road specific plan. For members of the public who would like to comment during this item, there will be an opportunity during the question and answer about halfway through the presentation. You may also email comments to publiccomment@burlingame.org. You may submit a chat through the chat function in Zoom. You may raise your hand in Zoom through the raise hand feature. If you're joining us by phone, you may dial *9, which would raise your hand, and then we can call on you at that point. And with that, I am going to hand it over to our consultant team, which is KTGY and Gates and Associates. They'll introduce themselves further, but we're delighted to have this opportunity. This is an important project to the city, and we're excited to be working on this specific plan. We were really particularly encouraged by the interest and enthusiasm by the Planning Commission to be involved in this. So that's why we wanted to schedule this special study session so that we can get input from all of you, and you have a unique perspective as you've been looking at projects in this planning area for some time, and many of you were also involved in the general plan update. So you kind of had the inside track in terms of having thought about this area for a while. So with that, and without further ado, I'd like to hand over the presentation to our consultant team.
Can you hear me, Kevin? Okay, everything's good?
Yep, thank you.
That's great. Cindy, are you driving?
Kevin is.
So why don't you go to the first slide, Cindy?
Oh no, it's Kevin. Sorry.
Oh, Kevin,
Yeah.
are you driving?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I'm driving this part. We'll do a little handover when we do the input part.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I am very excited to be having this visioning meeting with you. The presentation we provide to you is a variation of something we shared with the CAC and the TAC, so that you'll understand what they've been seeing. But sort of the purpose of the meeting tonight is basically to update you on some of the work the teams have been doing, so we kind of have that shared foundation of information. And then we really want to solicit from you your input regarding the guiding principles we should be sort of using as we're going through the North Rollins specific plan. Next slide, Kevin. So there's going to be a brief sort of introduction, welcome kind of project overview. And then we would like to actually turn it over and ask you some questions a little bit about what you like about North Rollins area currently, and what you'd like your vision of how it should evolve. And so we'll be sort of turning over to get information for you, and then kind of summarize at the end some of the common themes we've been hearing. Next slide. So this is just an opportunity to introduce your team. I'm Linda Gates with Gates and Associates, the landscape architects working on the project. With me tonight is Rusty Case, who is the project manager for the project. And then Kevin, would you like to introduce the city staff who's working on the project?
Certainly. Amalia Kalokohakafisi is our project manager for this project. I'm assisting her with this. And then Ruben is our planning manager and has been also kind of a sounding board for some of the things that we've been working on.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Cindy Ma. I'm with KTGY Architects and Planners. I'm here with Andrew Levins. We are part of the Community Planning and Urban Design team of KTGY. Really excited to be here with everybody and working on this project.
And Kimberly Horn is also part of our team. They'll be handling the planning, traffic engineering, and all that, you know, boring, extremely valuable and stuff.
Yeah, Mike's on the
Yeah.
call too.
Okay, Mike. Okay.
Linda, I appreciate you saying extremely valuable. Yes, Mike Murray from Kimberly Horn Associates, focused on the transportation as well as the infrastructure components on the plan. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for having us this evening.
Perfect. Next slide. So Kevin, why don't you just kick us off here a little bit?
So an overview, and again, I think the commissioners probably know this, you know, more in particular as you've been looking at projects, but this specific plan is an outgrowth of the general plan update. General plan was adopted in January of 2019, and the North Rawlins area was what was described in the general plan as the live work land use district. And although the shape that you can see in the diagram there is kind of an odd shape, it's meant to correspond to a half-mile walking distance from the Millbrae multimodal transit station. So it's not a radius as much as somebody, where do you actually get when you walk half a mile? And then some kind of logical, just which properties are inside or out. We have interim zoning right now, which has guided a couple of the development projects. So far, we will be coming back, spoiler alert, to the Planning Commission with a permanent version of that zoning next month. But meanwhile, we have had a couple of development proposals and projects. One is approved and one's been under review on Adrian Court and on Ingold Road. And those have been the sort of beta test or template for future development in this area. Next, please. Oh, I am the next person, sorry. There you go.
Do you want to introduce our committee too?
Certainly. So we have a community advisory committee, which includes two of the city council subcommittee for this project, Vice Mayor O'Brien and Councilmember Colson. Then we have the chairs from the commissions, Audrey, Chair Say from the Planning Commission, Chair Wetton from the Transportation and Parking Commission, Safety Commission, and Stephanie Lee, Commissioner Lee from the Park and Recreation Commission. Then we also have a number of stakeholders from the project area, and we tried to be really representative in terms of both new players and long established players. So you'll perhaps recognize some of the names here. I won't go through them all, but say, you know, Guitard is probably one of the more established players, whereas Lisa Lilliland is from Proterra, who's probably one of the newer ones. And then Elaine Breeze, who you know well, represents the developments that have been in the area. We also have an at-large member, Raymond Larios, who, while he's not within this project area specifically, we wanted to include a voice of the sort of next generation, so to speak, in terms of you know, interest in planning and transit-oriented development, and just have that kind of perspective as well. The Technical Advisory Committee includes representatives from all of the departments. I won't go through all the names, but you'll probably recognize many of them, if not all of them, from your work here with the city. And the TAC is really meant to vet a lot of these ideas. We want to make sure that as ideas emerge, that they play reality-wise in terms of what's on the ground. And then also we know that our own staff will have objectives in terms of infrastructure, transportation, sustainability, things like that. So we want to make sure that we have the full array of staff members involved in providing input as well.
Great. Thanks, Kevin, for the overview. The next part of this presentation, I'm going to go over the purpose of the specific plan project and share some of the existing conditions report information to you planning commissioners. The specific plan, as many of you may know already, is a regulatory document designed to implement the goals and policies of the general plan. The goals shown on this slide for North Rawlins specific plan align with the general plan policies for the Rawlins area. I'm not going to read word for word those 4 buckets, but essentially they are to increase housing density and transit supportive uses, to provide improved connectivity of all modes between the project area and the Mill Bay Transit Station, create urban design standards that promote walkability and livability, and also generate a strategy for open space amenities. We are really hoping that we can get planning commissioners' insight tonight to help build upon and create additional goals and principles to be included in the specific plan. Next slide, please. The anticipated schedule for the specific plan project will be about a year. We kicked it off in June with city staff and have since done some background research and analysis. We're happy we can be here at the study session with you planning commissioners as part of the engagement process. Linda will give some more details about the overall outreach in a little bit. Want to just note that as we've all experienced this past 6 months or so, things come up that are out of our control. So this schedule may change slightly, but as a team, we are really shooting to stick to this as much as we can. Next slide. Okay. The setting. So as shown in the previous slide, we've spent several months on background research and analysis of the North Rawlins project area. The conditions report is available on the project website. If you have not had a chance to read the report, highly encourage that you do, and we can make sure planning commissioners have a link to that project website. The report is based on information available from our experience and observations during site visits in the project area and with talking with staff members and examining existing documents. We've included the general plan map on the slide just to show that the project area is on the northern edge of the city of Burlingame. So right up against Millbrae, lots of great opportunity there in terms of what it can mean as an entrance into the city as well. Next slide, please. Okay. When we delved into the project area for the project area history, we were connected with Burlingame's Historical Society and got really great information and graphics. We wanted to make sure we share it with the group here today. So before North Rawlins became the industrial park, we know it is now. It was originally native land, then the Buri Rancho of the Sanchez family, and then the Mills estate from 1860s to about the 1950s. This historical context and narrative are something we can hope we can incorporate into the recreating of North Rawlins on this project. Next slide. Okay. North Rawlins' existing urban form is comprised of its current land uses and building scale and mass. On the left-hand side of the slide is a graphic showing the existing land uses in the area. I want to emphasize that these are existing uses and ones we've collected based on field observation is not what is being proposed, right? The categories that they are broken down into correspond to the uses that are in the current interim zoning for the area. As of today, there are approximately 87 acres total. Well, it's not going to change, sorry. Of the 87 acres today, about 22% is being used for industrial, which includes businesses such as Guittard, Seas, the public storage, and other warehouse businesses with showroom components. 20% of the area is made up of commercial service and retail. This includes office headquarters of software, electronic, and freight forwarding businesses, and also sports recreation facilities such as Primetime Athletic Club. And about 8% makes up commercial service. This includes moving companies and insurance offices. There is actually quite a bit of mixed using we've noticed that's happening today. This occurs between parcels in the commercial service and retail or industrial uses. We see them as horizontal mixed uses and also within the buildings, which potentially could have a little bit of vertical component, but assuming all horizontal. These mix of uses combined are about 20% of the project area total. The utility easement, which is right at the center in the gray itself, is about 4.5% of the project area, and public facilities in the blue, such as the San Francisco Water Quality Bureau and a school board building, makes up about the other 4%. In terms of building mass and scale, the right graphic shows the average building heights in the project area. We found that while many of the buildings are technically one story, their industrial use and beginnings have them at higher ceiling and building heights than that of traditional retail and residential buildings. We provided this information because the building heights really are part of the public realm, which contributes to the spatial experience as you're walking through the project area. Next slide, please. Here are some pictures that we took when we were out there walking around. Luckily, we were able to do so before wildfire season, so got a lot of blue skies. Have to note that something we couldn't portray on the slide was the incredible smell that came when we were walking around, that of chocolate being made. In terms of in the pictures, we noticed that while there are sidewalks throughout the project area site, they may not all be accessible. Some are very narrow with fire hydrants or poles sticking in the middle. There's many driveway curb cuts that can be quite disruptive for pedestrians. We understand they are necessary for the current use in the area. There are large front setbacks, which we have seen been creatively transformed into some pockets with inviting landscape, assuming that's a residual of the subdivision parcelization that happened during the 1950s. The utility and power lines are also very visible as we were walking around. They're located towards the east, but when we look towards the west, we notice that there are quite a bit of peekaboo views to the hills down the secondary streets off of North Rollins. Next slide, please. In terms of transit and mobility, talking about roads first, there aren't too many roads currently in the project area. Rollins Road is the main arterial with Adrian Road paralleling Highway 101. Rollins Road is a major truck route currently and was noticeably busy when we were out there during our visits. Broderick, Goddard, Ingle, and Adrian are the secondary type of roads in the project area and are dead-end streets. In terms of transit access, the project area has quite a bit of options in access. The Millway Transit Center with BART and Caltrain are nearby and within a quarter-mile walking distance from the northern edge, and within the half-mile walking distance, as Kevin has mentioned, within the whole larger project area. There are several local community shuttles. One is operated by San Mateo County and another one through Burlingame Bayside towards BART and Caltrain. And then there's also the North Burlingame Shuttle, which is shown in green, which runs through and around the site. Mike is here, on our team, so if there's any questions about this, he can definitely speak more to it during our Q&A. Next slide, please. In terms of open space in the project area, there currently isn't much. And I do have to note that we forgot to include one of the paseos in one of the proposed development project areas highlighted there. Thank you, Kevin. We do have it updated on our website, but we'll make sure we get it updated in this presentation too. So the two projects Kevin mentioned, their open spaces are shown in the lime green. Currently, the only large available open space looks to be part of the private recreational facilities or Primetime Athletic Club, right? So as mentioned earlier, one of the goals of the specific plan will be to identify and develop a strategy to create more open space amenities in the area. We're really seeing this as an opportunity to connect open spaces together and also to the overall health and project vibrancy. There are a couple of bicycle facilities existing in North Rollins shown in the right side graphic. There's a class 2, which is designated striped lanes, and class 3, more like Sharrows, the painted icons on the road along Rollins Road. When we were out there, we saw a couple of bicyclists come through, but it did look a bit tricky for them to navigate when there are large trucks driving by or being parked in the median. In terms of sidewalks, again, as one of the previous photos show, they are existent, but they can be considered minimum along Rollins Road, and in some cases in the secondary streets need to be complete. Next slide, please. Okay. I just went through a lot of information, and all of this is taken out of our existing conditions report, which can be found on the project website. We'll be happy to send a link out to the planning commissioners in the chat or after this meeting. To consolidate all the information, we created this existing conditions and opportunities graphic exhibit. Wanted to really highlight, opportunities along Rollins Road, the challenges that might come with it as well. We're showing mid-block connections for pedestrians in the green dash where we think they could occur. Highlighting the utility easement, right? What can we use that for potentially in the future? We understand the railroad tracks, and the eucalyptus windrows are fixed edges, but how can we see them as ways to look beyond with the views to the hills and those such opportunities? There's the El Portel Channel to the north, which could have great potential as an open space edge and also as an opportunity for a northern gateway. And then we have great views to the water to the east. And in the TAC and the CAC meetings, we've heard suggestions and talks about how do we connect to the other side of the freeway. So those are all things we're hoping to explore together. So with that, I'm going to transition this next part of the presentation to Linda, who'll go over the outreach strategy and lead us into the exercise. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. That was great. So I'm sure you all understand that a specific plan is only as good as how it is tailored to the specific values of the community and the needs of the community. And to do that, we need to really reach out to the community. So we're proposing, as Cindy mentioned, sort of this 4-phase process where we develop guiding principles, leads us to create some alternatives, a preferred concept, and then draft plan. At each phase of this project, we'll be meeting with the CAC, the TAC, the community at large, and as well as having key meetings with the City Council and the Planning Commission checking in. So this is really a community-driven planning exercise. Next slide, Kevin. So to date, hopefully you'll have a chance to visit our website. We've got a website up where we're posting documents and sharing information as we go through the project. We have a great CAC, which your chair is actively participating on. Thank you very much. Who already have been giving us wonderful insights. The CAC also, we're hoping, will be ambassadors to other people, merchants and business owners and property owners in the North Rollins area to sort of answer questions as trusted source of information for people. Next slide. We're having our study session with you right now. We're planning to hold a community virtual meeting in the latter part of October. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize is that we're trying to really reach out to the local businesses and property owners in the North Rollins area. The community at large can participate, but we will be sending a postcard to everyone that's in the local area to really encourage them to participate and share their input in the meeting. There also is the opportunity, there may be some key stakeholders who are not able to participate on the CAC or any of the meetings that we've set up the potential to set interviews with them. And then we're hoping that an outgrowth of this whole process will be a naming contest. We're creating a new place, a new neighborhood, and it'd be great if an identity for it emerges. Next slide. So at this point in time, I wanted to answer any questions about what we presented to date or have any input. And I don't know, Kevin, if you want to consider letting the public make any comments at this point before we break out and start having a little working session with the commission.
Yes, I think we could start if there's first clarifying questions from commissioners, not so much comments, but commissioners. And then from there, we can sort of open a public hearing, although this isn't a public hearing, but check with the public if there's also comments that we would like to hear from the public. So I see a raised hand from Commissioner Loftus.
Yeah, one simple question. In the existing conditions document we've got, there's several times there's a phrase that says the southern 2/3 and the northern 1/3. I just want some clarification on that. Is it Project North with north pointed towards the Millbrae intermodal, or is it?
Yeah, that's always the tricky thing in Burlingame is which way is north. So we all pretend that El Camino Real and Rollins Road head north-south. So it would be the area closest to Millbrae.
All right,
technically north is probably towards the bay, but
Okay.
we pretend to.
I wanted to make sure it wasn't the technical north, you know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
that's a good question though. Yes.
Let's see, Vice Chair Taronis.
Thank you. Yeah, sort of along the same lines. I seem to recall, Kevin, that we put together some thoughts for the South Rollins Road area. So I guess my question is, and not to cut to the chase, but we talked when we were looking at the South Rollins Road area, I recall talking about street character, in particular, the Rollins Road access itself, not necessarily the side streets, but we talked a lot about street calming and those sorts of things. How will that interface with this? Or are those things that we talked about still in play and still valid to help inform the North Rollins Road area?
They are, when we first were putting together this process, we did look at whether to include the entire Rollins Road area, both the North Rollins Road area that we're looking at, as well as what the southern part is the land use is called Innovation Industrial.
Right.
The council subcommittee really wanted to focus on this northern area, as that was where a lot of the activity was, and that it was probably the most transformative. It's not to say, I'd say the southern portion is probably what we might call an area of influence. So there may be some lessons that we think about with the northern area that might apply to the south in future efforts. And that could include everything from the zoning code update that we're also working on in parallel, ultimately some streetscape improvements. But I think the idea was to first focus on this northern area as being the real change area.
Okay, I guess obviously the point being, it's, I'm not that anybody would do this, but, if we're going to talk about street character, et cetera, along Rollins Road, I'd hate to, unless there's a specifically defined real gate right at the post office site, is there going to be continuity, et cetera? I know that good planners, you'll keep that in mind, but I just, since we talked a lot about those things, I think a lot of those things that we did talk about still apply, at least for me, on into this North Rollins Road area, particularly in regards to street character, traffic calming, tree canopy, et cetera. But we can talk about that later, but I just want to make sure that that's kind of kept in mind.
Certainly. I'll just add, not to have the full discussion, but we do see the traffic is going to be the same, whichever part you are. So any streetscape discussions in the northern part need to take into account there are trucks, there are freight, there's industrial uses. So right. The two have a lot of those commonalities.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more questions first from commissioners before we start input? Do we have any members of the public who would like to provide input at this point? And like we said, we will have a community meeting later in October. So if members of the public are in attendance and think of something afterwards, there will be other opportunities as well. So with that, I think we can go back to our next part of the program here, which is the idea sharing. Now, Cindy, is this where you want to take over the slides, or?
Yeah, that could work.
Okay, well, let me hand it over.
Great.
Everyone, hold on just a second.
Oh, okay. I think you need to give me permission.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I think you can try it now.
Perfect. Okay.
So we have talked at you for a while, and now we want to hear from you. So when we met with the CAC and the TAC, we posed two questions to them. The first was, what do you like about the existing North Rollins area? We heard comments like the quirky character, the special kind of sociology that's grown up there, connections and proximity to the train station were some of the things that we're hearing from them. So as I said, there's two questions. The first is, what do you like about the North Rollins area? And the second question is, what would you like to see? And so why don't we just go around and get some input from you on what you like about it as it exists today, and you hope that we can build upon. And would Chair like to call on people to respond to this first question, or do you want me to just surprise people?
I do see a hand from Vice Chair Torona, so
Okay, good. Okay.
we can monitor the hand raising, and then after Toronis is Commissioner Camarado.
All right, thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll go first.
That's fabulous.
I like the axis of Rollins Road, so I'd like to see the character from the south continue on to the north as it's developed. No.
Okay, so what would you like to see? That's good.
No, I'm being facetious from my last question. But,
Okay. Okay.
I think that there is an opportunity for strong connections. I know we're looking specifically at the North Rollins Road area, but it is an opportunity for a strong boulevard scheme of some sort. And because of the width of that street, I think that there's an opportunity for a street diet, some traffic calming, et cetera. But before I go there, let me answer your specific question. You talked about what we like. Yeah, I agree. I like the quirkiness, the opportunity for a what I would call a sort of mix of uses, not mixed uses mixed use specifically, but a mix of uses, an opportunity for a multitude of things to happen in this area that could work together in some kind of harmony once it's well planned and detailed to create a neighborhood. For example, I can't help but thinking back to when the SPCA was building their facility, and we had a lot of outcry over noise and smell that would come from that. And that has not been my experience, and I don't think the community's experience at all with that facility. It's been a great asset to the community, and the overwhelming character of smell comes from Guittard's chocolate. And so I believe it was City Council Member Brownrigg at the time, Commissioner Brownrigg, who said, this is where we want industrial smells to happen. And it just so happens that Guittard's chocolate is one of those industrial smells. It's a long way of saying that I think it's a great opportunity for a multitude of these types of uses as this area evolves to continue to happen. In other words, to say to the existing users, existing tenants, existing facilities that we're not looking to move you and relocate you. We're looking to create a neighborhood that allows for these things to happen. That would be my definition of live work, meaning, sorry, train coming by. My definition of live work, meaning, industrial type work activities that can harmonize with living facilities to where people can run those types of operations in this area. I also like what's happening in terms of a couple of the key large projects that we already have going. The Adrian Court project and the Ingold project from Summerhill, I think are great projects. I think it would be great if the development standards as they come to fruition would allow for those types of densities and those types of uses by right. So, we have a community member in Summerhill that is helping us to create some energy in that area. So I think that we should build on that and continue to make a strong neighborhood. Going back to Rollins Road, I will reiterate what was discussed previously. And some of it had to do with the tree canopy, allowing for bulb outs in the streets that might include tree islands, perhaps even allowing for a median with trees down the center of that street. Some of those things I think should still be studied and could help create an axis along Rollins Road that can create real connection and sort of help create a better pedestrian experience out in that area. That's right now is sort of a desert of pedestrians because of some of the difficulties in trying to traverse. So I'll stop now and let others comment. Thanks.
Those were great comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a hand up from Commissioner Camarado.
Yeah, so thank you for all your hard work on this. What I would say that I really like about that north area, having grown up here, was the access to the wide streets, riding our bikes. So I think that's going to be really important for the community. The other thing that I really love is that we have the opportunity now with the large wide streets to get foliage in there and soften some of this landscaping and provide some green area for kids to play, and the facilities, the new facilities that are there for people to be outside. So I'd love to see some outside space. I the one thing that I brought up at one of the meetings a while back was this, and I don't know if it's possible, but okay, this is going back a long time ago when I lived on Paloma, and the interesting thing that we would do, because we were members of Prime Time back in the late 70s, early 80s. And what we would do is cross the train tracks, which was illegal now, but access for the people that are living in the residential space to get over to that area and then have an evening of entertainment and have some of this mixed use that might be open to later evening. So we can really capture some of this North Rollins Road area. I'd love to see some sort of access. I don't know if that's even possible, but I would love something like that. We used to ride our bikes over and as kids and have just a great time. So I'd love to see some of that. I like the quirkiness of the area. I think of this area as the Santa Barbara has that funk zone, and I'd love to see some funkiness and art and just new creativity from people that are living in that area or own in that area. So part of me also doesn't want to make it too confining of what you can do there. I'd like to just open it up and let's see what people come up with. Of course, I know we have to have rules and regulations around some of this, and but I'd really love to see some creativity in that area, and I think it's a perfect place for it.
It's interesting. A lot of the themes that you're going, like Santa Barbara Funk Zone and stuff, the CAC was mentioning that the dog patch. So it's Burlingame sort of seems to have a very shared vision here.
Thank you. I see a hand up from Commissioner Loftus.
Yeah, I mean, this is a funny question. What do you like about it? It leaves me cold. I got to say, it's a very utilitarian place, and I don't feel one way or another about it. It's an industrial area pretty much right now. So I find it hard to answer that question. I think that the trick here is that the document we've got and all the sentiments that have been expressed talk about a completely new neighborhood, creation of a completely new neighborhood, and that begs the question: well, what does that mean? What's a neighborhood mean? What is it you're trying to achieve if you're trying to create a neighborhood? And I think at the very least it means, I don't think it's a matter of pure geography personally. I wouldn't consider it a neighborhood right now, but that's just me. I think that a neighborhood requires something beyond going there to work during the daytime, and it implies that there's some sort of high level of social interaction. And so if you're trying to make this place happen, then social interaction is going to be the key, and no amount of prettying the place up is going to do it. And so I would be very hesitant to get deep into the aesthetics of the area, because I don't think that's really what's going to make it sing or not sing. What would I like to see? I'd like to see a place that I'd like to go to for some reason. So, and there are many different kinds of places that one might want to go for one reason or another. So I think the trick is to figure out, what is it that makes this place a destination, or what would make someone want to live here? So I'm kind of at a loss. The slate is too blank for me right now. And I would need to, I could sit down and sketch as an architect, I could sit down and sketch my own thoughts. But that's not my business here. My business, I think I need something to react to. Words are not going to do it for me. And saying that we're creating a neighborhood is not going to do it either. And I'll know a neighborhood when I see it, or I'll know a neighborhood when I see something that points towards a neighborhood. So best I can do right now.
Okay, sounds like you're going to be really ready at the alternative stage.
We have a hand up from Commissioner Schmid, and then followed after that, Commissioner Gall.
Hi there, good evening. I kind of want to build on what Commissioner Loftus was kind of saying too. I don't think just prettying up the street's going to do it. I think that there's some uses that we've got to consider differently. I've lived here a long time, and my reasons for being on Rollins Road are to cut from Millbrae Avenue to Broadway and to go to prime time and to go to the Burlingamer. And it's largely to take my kids somewhere. I would love to see that we had a brewery or other kinds of industrial uses that are more entertaining, but most of the uses down there are truly industrial. And so I think we're going to need to consider how that works. And if we're not kicking out industrial uses there, then I don't know where we're going to suddenly create community. The new housing projects will definitely infuse a lot of people, but it's going to be challenging to be down there if there's not facilities and things to go along with it. So there's going to have to be more opportunity for food and beverage and other kinds of things to happen. And I think that maybe how we could how do we soften up the first 100 feet of Rollins Road on either side and not having heavy industrial right on Rollins or storage or moving. Those are fairly dead activities. So how do we move, how do we maybe encourage our more industrial to be closer to the tracks or closer to the freeway such that we can create a bit more of a core down the middle here and then take advantage of Rollins Road. So those are my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Schmid. And next up, we have Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Commissioner Schmid and Commissioner Loftus, I think a lot of people go down Rollins Road because the traffic is so light. I actually am there at least once a day on Rollins Road, and that's because I have suppliers down there for construction projects, some in the northern end and some in the southern end. But I think that when we start talking about a neighborhood, in my head, I'm hearing living spaces, and that's gonna clog things up a bit. So I wouldn't try to make it so much of a neighborhood. I think that the things like a brewery or some open air restaurants would happen as residential living is coming in, which it already is that's already happening. So I think as we watch it evolve, we'll get some of those, but I would be cautious not to get rid of all of those industrial uses and sort of push those people out, because that actually brings the traffic, it makes the traffic lighter. I mean, if you made the property so valuable, the Guitar Chocolate said, hey, let's sell this property and move, then all of a sudden we don't have those good smells anymore and we're just going to have housing. But again, like I say, is there are a lot of industrial uses down there that even the people of Burlingame can use for supply houses and showrooms and distribution centers for things that we all use. So I would just be careful to keep it as a very mixed use, I guess, would be my comment.
Yeah. That was a common comment too. Yes. People like the uses that are there.
Cindy, I'm going to suggest, because then we've already kind of gotten into this realm, is the next slide, which is what do we want to see? We do have a couple commissioners with their hands up. So I thought that this could perhaps be a segue to kind of look at what do we want to see? And we appreciate the early comments that we've gotten from some of the commissioners. We had a hand up first from Commissioner Camarado, followed by Chair Say.
Thank you. So what I'd like to see out there is just more of open space. I'd like the funkiness. If we can use the industrial portion of these buildings to create some innovative thinking and some creative artistic type of spaces, I think that would be awesome. I also want to make sure that we also take into consideration the utility, the big electric poles that we have, and that know that those are the areas that maybe we want to kind of make sure that we're not, of course, I am sure that everyone's aware of it, but just so that we're kind of taking those spaces and understand where those are. And so that that's not part of this whole kind of living and outside space, but maybe some treescape that can also soften that area would be really nice.
Thank you, Commissioner Camarado. Next is Chair Say.
Yes, I'm going to be repeating myself and some of the things that I shared in the.
Just had more time to work on it.
Yes, I'm glad we're at this point here because I did provide some of the imagery for this slide. And so the things that I would like to see include, when I think of the wide streetscape that we have there, the fact that it's going to continue to be an arterial for trucks and, freight carriers and all types of transportation. There's an opportunity with all that open space and that wide street as something overhead. And so the New York High Line is what came to my mind when I was envisioning some aspects of this area where we could bring a pedestrian or bicycling path up overhead above the street for a more safe path of travel, as well as an opportunity for people to enjoy the great outdoors and just use that open air up above. In image number 6, which is, I think, an ice cream shop or something, I would love to see that parts that in the, let's say it's the Summerhill developments and others that are to come, that in the commercial spaces available at the ground level, that there is some type of, whether they're bakeries or ice cream shops or, whatever, they're a destination for dining or for a special treat or something. We are certainly close to the airport, the freeway, the multimodal transportation. And so there's, with the bicycle path, there's just an opportunity to bring people near and far to come to experience this part of North Rollins Road. As well, I would love to see all the green spaces, potential for some kind of outdoor entertainment or mixed use in the sense of maybe some outdoor dining mixed with the event space. I think there was an image there. I can't find it right now, but there was an image that I think it's maybe 16 might be that. 16 and down below, a little bit lower, number 27, that might be an opportunity for, again, to enjoy the open space, open air, have some dining, maybe some concert, live music kind of space, comedy area. Noise will be a little bit less of an issue there in that part of the city. And although there will be, of course, living spaces nearby, it's a little bit different zoning here with the combined zoning and use of the space. And then lastly, I wanted to say that I would love to see some type of cool signage like in number 4, which is the, some type of an official entry point to this North Rollins Road area, both on the north side and the south side. As you enter and leave the area, that it'd be a great opportunity to kind of welcome visitors to this particular part of the city. And sorry, one more thing is in number 12, the opportunity potentially for some outdoor experiential art or sculpture that one can walk through and enjoy. It could be part of an open park area. And obviously it doesn't have to be as large or to this scale, but something that would add interest so that people could feel a little bit like that it could be neighborhoody, and that people would want to be drawn to this area to come and experience. I also had talked about the Chicago bean, which draws people from near and far to really just look at this reflective Chicago bean that you really can't experience other than just kind of look at your reflection and see the areas around it reflecting off of its curved form. And it's just such a simple idea, and it adds so much interest to an area. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, the chair had contributed a lot of photos. Other people in the CAC had contributed photos of what they wanted to see. So this was, you know, we're architects, a picture's worth 1,000 words to us. So that was wonderful.
We have two more hands up, Vice Chair Charonis, followed by Commissioner Loftus.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify along the lines of what Commissioner Gall was saying and what I was saying earlier in terms of allowing for the mix of uses, including those that are there now and not displacing those. You know, I just like to clarify, first of all, I think all of these images that we have here for the different types of destination places and uses are great. But I would be okay as a start for this live work area, as a start again, if it were not, at least yet, a destination place for me or for even others in the community. I would like first and foremost that this be, if it's going to be a live work area, that this be a great place for the people that live and work there to live and work there. You know, first and foremost. And one simple way I think to do that, for example, is to allow for corner markets on every corner, any corner, you know, and by right somehow. And that's what allows for that doesn't become a destination place for me per se to go and grab a groceries or carton of milk or whatever it is, but it does allow for the people that are living and working there to do that. You know, for example, I don't think that there's a large sweeping mass of people that come from all over town to go to the Broadway market, the produce market on there. But I go around the corner there often, you know, and so it's those types of things that lead to this being a great place and not necessarily a destination place for all of the community. And maybe that can evolve as things change and we get some things like this in this image board, which I think would be great. But I think first and foremost, it has to be a great live work place, you know, as it comes to fruition or comes into being. Let's put it that way. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appropriate, yes.
And we have one more commissioner, and I'll just also mention for members of the public who are streaming in, we're just finishing up a study session for the North Rollins Road specific plan. The regular planning commission meeting will start in a few minutes. So if you're wondering what's happening, we also hope you find this interesting. So with that, Commissioner Loftus has his hands up.
Yeah, those were good comments by Commissioner Charonis. I agree with him. One thing I think that's really important is we don't fool ourselves into thinking this is someplace that it's not. This is not a neighborhood or an industrial area of really nice old brick buildings. So, you know, there's a lot of sort of not so nice buildings over there. And so using imagery that suggests that we're, you know, brick warehouse, urban center is not very useful. So, and it's easy to get yourself sucked into believing something that's not true. So beware of that. I do think there's some areas of Berkeley, Oakland, and Emeryville that are probably not dissimilar to what we've got going on here. And I would look there for those kinds of images. I would shy away from, you know, San Francisco and some other major urban centers where the building stock is much more robust and earthy, and we've got a lot of stucco and, you know, a lot of sort of crappy, not to put a fine point on it, sort of crappy, you know, stucco commercial window buildings down there. And okay, that's all.
Well, I sense that we have to be wrapping this up. We've got only one more minute to your other meeting starts. Is there any other one, somebody still wants to make a closing comment here? This has been super helpful to our group. I think that it always helps in the beginning to create some of that guiding principle and something that you're working towards. And I think your insights have been extremely valuable. We appreciate them very much. We'll be summarizing this and putting some of these presentations onto the website so that hopefully the community can be watching what's going on. I think doing transparency right now is even more critical than normal. And I also think it's an interesting time to do a live-work environment, because that is sort of what we're all discovering is live-work now. So you guys are very progressive. Anybody do we need to open it to the public at the end, Kevin, or are we good?
I think we are good for this meeting. For members of the public who have just kind of entered the room, we are planning a community meeting version of the same content for the end of October. We're going to fix that date in a day or two, and then put out information through the e-news and through the city's social media accounts and what have you. So we certainly see this as an ongoing process, and we want to hear from the public. And then in terms of the commissioners, the next phase is the fun phase where we see alternatives. So we'll have things for you to look at and kind of kick the tires on. And you know, there's some great insights here that we've heard that will really help in informing those concept alternatives and kind of keeping them real for Burlingame and for what's here, and really focusing on those opportunities. So we really appreciate the thoughtful comments that have come from the commissioners here tonight, as well as our CAC members that we've heard from prior, and our community members in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So with that, I think we will transition over. I will hand it back over. I want to thank also the KTGY team, Gates and Associates, and Kimley Horn for putting together the presentation and kind of having all this queued up. So we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Have a good
night. Have a good evening.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. So welcome to those of you joining us now for the Planning Commission meeting. Today, of course, is Monday, September 28th, and we are just about to start the Planning Commission meeting, the regular Planning Commission meeting. So I'm going to repeat some of the elements we discussed at the beginning of the study session with regards to access and joining in the conversation in tonight's meeting. For all in attendance, please note that the meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. As a courtesy during the proceedings, we ask that you place yourselves on mute. And sound obviously transfers easily, and it can be disruptive for those who are speaking. Please note that there are several ways to submit your comments during this meeting. You may send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted throughout the meeting and will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the typical 3 minutes that we customarily allow for verbal comments. You may also submit your comment using chat in Zoom by clicking on the chat button located at the bottom of your screen. Staff will then read the comment at the appropriate time. Lastly, you may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the participant button located at the bottom of your screen and then click Raise Hand. Members of the public who are participating in the Zoom meeting by phone can dial *9 and raise your hand. So we'd like to now move on to agenda item number 2, roll call. The record should note that all 7 members of our commissioners are present this evening. And then moving on to agenda item number 3, approval of minutes. We don't have any meeting minutes to review this evening, so I'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is the approval of the agenda. Staff, are there any changes to the agenda? Yes, we know item 8.
Yes, Madam Chair, item 8A, 100 Costa Rica Avenue has been continued at the applicant's request. It will be on the next Planning Commission meeting on October 13th.
Thank you. And in terms of recusals, I understand that Commissioner Gall is recusing from item 9B, 1418 Bellevue Avenue, because he owns property located within 500 feet. Are there any other recusals this evening? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to agenda item number 5, public comments, non-agenda items. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission agenda may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Brown Act, which is the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits a planning commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. We will use a timer, and we may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers. Please speak clearly into your microphone. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda this evening? Seeing none, I will move on. Oh, yes, Commissioner Camarado.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I have to recuse from item 7A since I have a property within 500 feet of that project.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 6, study items. We do not have any study items this evening, so I'll move on to agenda item number 7, the consent calendar. We have items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine. They are acted on simultaneously unless separate discussion and or action is requested by the applicant, a member of the public, or a commissioner prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt. We have 3 items on the consent calendar this evening: 7A, 1249 Laguna Avenue, 7B, 1321 DeSoto Avenue, and 7C, 120 Occidental Avenue. Would any member of the public or the applicant like to pull this item for discussion? Or would any member of the Planning Commission like to pull any of the items for discussion? Seeing nothing, we don't have any emails or anything.
No, we do not have any emails, and I do not see any hands raised to pull any of the items.
All right. In
Madam
that
Chairman.
case, then, sorry.
I was just gonna make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Oh, great. I think, so maybe we can pull out, we'll probably have to do 2, so since we have Commissioner Camarado recusing herself from 7A. So
Okay.
I'll take that motion from you,
Make a
Vice
motion
Chair
to approve
Taronis, for 7A. And can we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
And who was that was seconding?
I'll let Commissioner Loftus second it, I think.
Commissioner Loftus. Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Vice Chair, his new title, Taronis, and seconded by Commissioner Loftus. Is there any discussion on the motion? May we please have a roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Vice Chair Taronis,
Aye.
and Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-1-0. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. Now, if I may have a motion for items 7B and 7C.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. And seconded, I
I'll
will
second.
second it. So we have a motion by Commissioner Camerado, seconded by myself, Chair Say, for items 7B and 7C. Is there any discussion on this motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Vice Chair Taronis,
Aye.
and Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 7-0-0-0. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, including noticing costs. Congratulations. So now we move on to agenda item 8. Regular action items. As mentioned before, agenda item 8A has been continued at the request of the architect and property owner. So we'll move on to agenda item 8B, 601 California Drive. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project?
Oh, Madam Chair.
Yes?
Yes, I did have an opportunity to meet with the architect and with the property owner a while back, just to get a preview of what we're seeing this evening.
Thank you. All right, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant is proposing to construct a new 5-story, 25-unit live-work building with at-grade parking at 601 California Drive. The ground floor will consist of an entrance lobby and an exercise room along California Drive, and a conference room is proposed at the corner of the building facing California Drive and Floribunda Avenue. Behind these building amenities is a parking garage for 25 vehicles. The Planning Commission first reviewed this application as a design review study item on December 9th of 2019. Changes to the application are summarized in the staff report, and the applicant has submitted a letter describing the changes, which is included in the staff report. In summary, the application is requesting commercial design review for construction of a new 5-story, 25-unit live-work building, conditional use permit for building height, condominium permit for construction of the new building, and a tentative condominium map. The applicant has prepared a presentation, but first I'm available for questions of staff. Also with us this evening is Leo Mena and Aaron Effner from ICF, who prepared the environmental review. So at this point, either myself or the ICF representatives are available for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff or the applicant? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, just a quick question. Did I miss a material sample board somewhere? I don't remember seeing that there was one to look at. But I'm a little bit surprised by that.
I don't believe we have a samples board. We can get clarification from the applicant in terms of, I can't remember if we had one at the study meeting, but perhaps when the applicant makes their presentation, they can clarify that.
It seems to me that, you know, a project of this scale and size and importance, we ought to be looking at materials and not just pictures.
And may I, excuse me, may I speak?
Let us just first get, sorry.
Yes, if we can just get through these comments to questions to staff, and then we'll get to you soon, sir.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions for staff? All right. Seeing none, I'm going to now open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name and anything you would like to add about the project.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ian Birchall. I represent Ian Birchall and Associates. We're the architect for this project. And first, I'd like to, one, confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. And two, the sample board was presented at the initial design review, and we left it at the back of the hall, and then we noticed that nobody picked it up, so we took it back to our office. I'm more than happy to have that delivered back to City Hall at any time that you wish, but we did have a full sample board, and we went through the materials that are being proposed for the project.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've been told that I just say next slide and there's a magic wand and we move to the next slide.
That's right.
Next slide, please. This is a data sheet and my standing joke for 18 years in San Francisco and Bay Area is there will be a test later. This is a 25-unit project. They're all one bedroom. Some of them are larger with a one bedroom and a den. We have 25 parking spaces. And as has already been described, we have some common area facilities on the ground floor. Next slide, please. This is the site plan, and it shows the photovoltaic array on the roof, its relationship to the existing buildings, and also to the neighborhood residential. It's obviously the intersection of California and Floribunda. Next slide, please. Ground floor plan showing the parking. The parking is mechanical parking. It is a 3-high, 1-pit parking rack system that's individually controlled. For every 3 spaces that you see in plan, there are 8 parking spaces. There's always 1 empty because that's rotates around to bring back for the next person to park their car. The purple areas designate a shared exercise facility. As you know, we are also proposing a building at the other end of the block. And the idea right now is that that would be a shared facility. And then the corner space is a conference room that's also going to be a shared facility with the workforce spaces down in the other building. The trash room is, oh, I got a pointer. The trash room is here. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Good, thank you. And we have a landscaped rear yard, and this is basically left as planted area. And the transformer vault is right here at the end of the property. Next slide, please. Orange designates 1-bedroom units. You can see this, each of the 1 bedrooms has outdoor terrace balcony, single elevator, double staircase. We're making a feature of this staircase, which you'll see later in the renderings. Next slide, please. We can skip through these very quickly. Next slide. At the top floor, we've set back the floor plate. That also helps us stay within the allowable FAR. The change in color designates that we have 1 bedrooms with a den, and each of these units at this level has access to basically a rooftop terrace, which you'll see in the section and the elevation and the renderings. Next slide, please. I will skip through these again quickly because I think the renderings show more about what we're trying to do, but the siding that you see here is a Parklex. It's a phenolic resin thin sandwich panel that forms a rain screen over the facade, and it's very similar to the one that we're using on the building on the other corner. And here's the top floor setback. Next slide, please. This is the main elevation to California. Next slide, please. Building section shows the parking arrangement and the units up above, setback at the top floor. Next slide, please. Context photographs, I think you're probably very familiar with these. Next slide. So these are obviously rendered model studies, and the copper color is the Parklex, which is a man-made product. It's actually got a wood grain and it's called copper because of the obvious copper color. We can go into the materials later if you want. The top floor is a window wall system that turns into a curtain wall system at the staircase. We like to use the staircases because they're required to have 24/7 illumination, so they become kind of like an illuminated lantern for wayfinding, certainly towards the entrance, and also for breaking up the massing on the building. Next slide, please. More renderings of the same thing. This is showing a close-up of some of the ground floor materials and the rear yard. There's a product called Tactile, which is a pressed concrete man-made textured tile that we're proposing to use for the light gray and the dark gray areas on the first floor. It's also highly graffiti resistant. Next slide, please. Samples or examples, excuse me, of the parklex on a building we did not do. These are buildings we did build, and it shows you the idea about the aluminum grating for the balcony railings. We find they add a veneer of privacy and transparency at the same time. These are two buildings at the shipyard we did. Next, please. Thank you. And the nighttime view to give you an idea of how the building would be seen at a dusk viewpoint. The entrance is here. This is the main staircase running up here. This is the second staircase, top floor units. The gratings, as you can see, a certain amount of transparency. Next slide, please. The rear yard landscaping. I think we provided more information on this in the package, but this is just to give you basically an occupiable area and then a passive area that links with a passive area on the private garden to the rear of this home. So we wanted to try to respect that area here. So we're keeping our active landscape area more towards the street side. Next slide, please. I think this is the last one, and I'll be happy to leave that up and take any questions that you have at this point. Thank you for your attention. I can't hear people.
You hear me?
Yes, I can now. Thank you.
Okay. We're now going to take questions from the commission for you. Commissioner Loftus.
Yeah, the reason I was asking about the material sample panel, thank you for reminding me, is I asked the question in our last meeting about the glass, which appeared to be, smoke gray charcoal glass, and it's rendered entirely different here, but I don't see it called out anywhere. Maybe I'm just missing it. It's called out the same on sheet 3.0. It's just called out vision glass panel. And on sheet 5.0, what was shown as a gray glass panel has disappeared from the sheet entirely. What's the nature of the glass? Is it clear the way it's rendered here?
Yes, sir. We took your concerns
Okay.
to heart, and we're making sure that we're using a fully transparent glass. Obviously, it's double glazed, so it'll be a low E to the inner pane, but there's no tint to the glass. So the glass.
Perfect. I just wanted some clarification. Thank you very much.
I'll be happy to submit a sample for the record as well to make sure that you have that.
Thank you. Vice Chair Taronis.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. That was very helpful. Just one simple question. You mentioned rooftop access. Am I correct in my reading of the plans that when you say rooftop access, you're talking about the terraces that are at the 5th floor only? In other words, there is not residential or user access to the uppermost roof where you have your solar panels, is there?
You are absolutely correct, sir. There's no access to that level, except for maintenance, of course.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I like how you've changed the streetscape and the access and the ground floor there. I'm having trouble reading it from the floor plan. How is the entry into the exercise room work?
We're making the entrance to the exercise room come from the street side, so it's accessible also from our other building at the end of the block here. And it is possible for us to find another entrance within the building, but quite frankly, we're trying to activate access outside the building back into the building, in keeping with the spirit of what we're trying to do on the ground floor.
Okay, that makes sense. So the building at the corner of California and Oak Grove will also have access to this exercise area?
That is the intention, and I'm couching obviously a response here. I can't say definitively yes, because this goes down to condo rules, regulations, CC&Rs, but that's the idea, yes. And that's why the door is on the outside, so that people don't have to come into the building, break a plane of security in order to use the exercise room. The owner is all for it. Our client for both buildings is one and the same. So it's just a matter of putting it into words.
Okay. And then how do you see the conference room being used?
We see that I'm president of my own HOA. The meetings are held in my apartment. That's one way that conference room is going to get used. And then, of course, it could also be used for meetings because of the live-work nature of the units and the fact that people are definitely working where they live these days and will continue to for a while. There's obviously a need for occasionally meetings post-pandemic where 3 or 4 people or more can gather. We see it as being an amenity. We can also see it being used as a small party room. It could be used as a private viewing room. There's all sorts of ways. We've done a bunch of these in several of our other buildings, and they've actually turned out to be quite successful. Okay. So the wood conference is a little bit of a misleading. It's not as complete in its description of the functions we expect.
Yeah, it sounds kind of narrow, and to hear that you've had success with it in other buildings is actually really helpful. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Hi there. Thank you. Great presentation. Just a small detail that I was noticing is mail. You know, there's a small area for mail, but as we are all becoming more work-live, getting a lot more packages and things, is there room or a back storage that I'm just not seeing in the plan that's going to enable you guys to receive?
Yes, the intent is a small building, so that mail area is actually quite large for 25 units, but we're looking to put parcel lockers above and below the mail, so in that area, so there will be places to drop off for larger packages. The conference room has a lockable closet at the back there, so there are ways in which that could be incorporated into a drop off. And thank you for raising that concern, because as president of the HOA, I'm having to tell all my members, pick up your damn packages from the front. I'm tripping over them getting into my building.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to ask if there's anybody in the public who would like to speak on this item.
So, Madam Chair, I do not see any chats. I do not see any emails, and there are no hands raised.
Okay. With that, I am going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I think this is really quite a handsome building now, and I really appreciate the applicant and the design team responding so well to our comments from the last meeting. I was looking back over them, and I think we were pretty clear that it didn't work then, and I think it totally works now. I think I'm really impressed with the attention to activating the street front with with activities inside the rooms, and I really appreciate that the glass promotes interaction between street inside and outside. I think it's a very, very nice project.
Vice Chair Taronis?
Yeah, I agree absolutely with Commissioner Loftus's comments. I won't repeat them, but the other thing that I really appreciate is the sensitivity to the transition, along Floribunda to the residential neighborhood. There's a nice buffer, a wedge of buffer that ranges from about 27 feet down to 18 feet to that neighborhood that I think is going to be very helpful with that transition. So I think that this is a very nice solution. I don't think I can support the findings in the staff report. I don't think that this will be detrimental to any properties in the neighborhood, so I can make the findings for the conditional use permit. And I think it's a very nice urban solution for this location. It's the right place for this type of increased density. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, thank you. Being new to the commission, this is my first time seeing this. I didn't see it in the study, but I think you've done a really nice job with it. I appreciate the materials. They look nice. I think the overall project is going to be a successful one there, and I look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Camarado?
I like what you've done on the project. I love the transitions, and I love that you've stepped it away from the main street and the articulations on the different floors. So thank you for all your hard work on this.
Thank you.
All right, and I ditto all the comments from my fellow commissioners. Very nice job, and thank you for the nice, brief, succinct presentation and to the point. Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I move that we approve the project, including the conditional use permit. Yeah.
All right.
I second that.
All right, I think I heard Commissioner Sargent first, so I will take this motion by Commissioner Loftus, seconded by Commissioner Sargent. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Vice Chair Taronis,
Aye.
and Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 7-0-0-0. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations.
Thank you all, commissioners.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. So we will now move on to agenda item number 9, design review study items. We have 9A, 16 Arundel Road. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to know any ex parte communications regarding this project?
Madam Chair, when visiting the project site, I did have an occasion or an opportunity to say hello to the property owner. And we just had a brief conversation about the landscaping in the front yard area. Thank you.
Thank you. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes. The applicant is proposing a first and second story addition to the existing single-family dwelling at 16 Arundel Road. The applicant is requesting front setback variances for both the proposed first and second floor additions. Based on the average of the block, the minimum required front setback for the first floor is 16 feet 2 inches, and the proposed front setback to the first floor is 9 feet, where 16 feet 2 inches is required based on the average of the block. The proposed front setback of the second floor is 17 feet 11 inches, where 20 feet would otherwise be required. The proposed second story encroaches into the declining height envelope along the left side of the house by 10 square feet. However, this is an allowable encroachment per the code in that it is considered a window enclosure. The application also includes converting part of the existing detached garage into a new 198 square foot accessory dwelling unit, or ADU. Review of the ADU application is administrative only and is not reviewed by the Planning Commission. Staff has determined that the ADU complies with the city's ADU regulations. So in summary, the applicant requests design review for a first and second story addition to an existing single family dwelling and front setback variances for proposed first and second floors. I'm available for questions, and the applicant is in attendance to also make a brief presentation and answer questions.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name, and add anything you'd like about the project?
Sure. Hi, I'm Ashley Klein. I'm the homeowner, and thank you, all of you commissioners. I have so much respect for the work that you do and the time that you spend as volunteers on the commission. I purchased my home in 2013, and as I could afford to, I've been very slowly trying to update it. And I replaced most of the landscaping myself. I'm a single parent, and so I've been saving for a long time to be able to afford this addition. One of the constraints that I have is to use the existing house. It's going to help a lot with my budget, especially since I've already updated the bathrooms and some other things inside. And so Tim and I worked hard to try to create something that's unique, but also true to the neighborhood. And we took a lot of inspiration from the houses nearby. As you guys saw, finding a way to incorporate the existing front entry and the porch was a little challenging just based on what's there and the way that my house is situated on the lot. And what you have in front of me is my first choice. We also tried something else, but we think that this is the one that's the most aesthetically pleasing, and also gives me a place to welcome neighbors and look for my keys in the rain and that sort of thing. So I've had a lot of dialogue with my neighbors. I know you have all those letters, and I haven't received any negative comments about the project. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant?
And my architect, Tim, is also here.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. This is Tim, and I am actually, I think Ashley elegantly put it together. I just want to kind of hearken on the style. We're just kind of doing a transitional kind of English European style home. It's a little bit of a departure from what I normally do, which is shingle style. So I'm super excited, and you'll probably see in some of the 3D and the 2D drawings that we've, detailed a lot of the house, and it is it's a custom home. And we're here to take any of your comments and answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a question from Vice Chair Taronis.
A couple of detailed questions, Tim. Can we go
Sure.
back to the front elevation in the presentation? Okay. Well, in the 2D drawings that we have in front of us, Tim, you have a couple of extra, or you got actually two, the cedar or redwood brackets, and they're both appearing on that front plane that's farthest forward on either side of that window on that first floor. And whereas in the SketchUp model, you have that one knee bracket where it appropriately would occur, I guess, where that steps back. So
yeah, understand. We would like to have it overhanging like we are on the 2D. That was a review that we had with Michelle about the variances. It would look way better if the second story just came out like, a foot or 8 inches or whatever you guys feel is, adequate.
Okay, are we reviewing what's before us tonight? Or are you asking us to review something that?
No,
presenting?
the 3D should be pushed forward. You would be reviewing the 2D drawings.
Okay, so then, but then the 2D drawings then are not up to date fully because I'm not seeing those. I'm not seeing that portion of the facade pushed forward on the side elevation, and not seeing those knee braces or brackets occurring anywhere. on the right side elevation.
On the right side, the driveway side. Yeah, correct. I will make
I'm
that.
not sure what we're being asked to approve. So I know we're not.
Understood.
Okay, I know we're not approving tonight. So what I would say is we need to get this resolved when this comes back before us for action. If you're asking for that to be pushed forward, then that's going to affect your variance application, and it'll affect your
Well, we're asking for that in the variance application. So I will correct the elevations.
Okay, then I got to go back to staff. Am I correct in understanding, though, that the variance application is for encroachment into the front setback on the second floor, which is required to be 20 feet, and they're asking for 17 feet and change? Is that measured to what's shown on these 2D drawings with a flat plane, or is that with the elevation pushed forward? Does staff know that, or Tim, do you know that, or?
It was to the floor plan, which is correctly drawn.
And I'll just clarify from staff. Typically, if there's discrepancies between renderings and plans, the plans dictate. Now, if there's discrepancies between plans and elevations, then that does need to be reconciled. But generally, the plans would be what the Planning Commission is approving.
We will make that a correction and note that in our response letter.
Okay, because so here's then, maybe I'll reserve this for comments then. If we can go back to the front elevation then again.
Sure.
Yeah, so looking at that lower left-hand corner drawing, Tim.
Yes.
Is there any reason, I mean, I think that this is a small item and it's not a deal breaker, but if that, assuming that does, well, I haven't asked my question yet, so hold on a second. You can't say correct if I haven't asked the question yet.
You're saying it's not a deal breaker. It's not, I don't think.
I haven't
Either
asked
a
my
foot
question.
in or a foot out.
Tim, you're doing the usual thing where you start interrupting and talking when somebody else is trying to talk, and I haven't asked my question yet, so you don't know what the deal breaker is. So what I'm asking is on this front elevation, assuming it all stays in plane, is there any reason why the windows on the second floor couldn't line up with the windows on the first floor? Now that to me is—
We could line them up.
But, okay. So, all right, because they're both new windows, correct? Or one's, I guess, going into an existing location on the first floor, right?
It is, but we could move that. We are way underneath our demo requirement.
Okay.
So we could move it.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, then my other question, okay, thank you. My other question is, there's a sort of a profile line that's around the windows. And then when I looked at your 2D drawing, your SketchUp drawing, it looked like there was a little bit of a shadow box effect around the windows. Is there something happening on the windows that's causing a shadow box, or is that just a heavy line around the casing trim?
Can you go to the 3D? It's more than likely it's just the rendering, and I can make that a little bit less pronounced so it doesn't look like that.
Yeah, just curious, because I wasn't sure in looking at the 2D drawing, because of that profile around the casing, if that meant that the windows were kind of set in or boxing and coming out, or
No, it's just the 3D rendering, and I can fix that.
Okay, but then you would also want to fix, I think, on the 2D drawings, well, I don't know if you would have that profile line, but I just want to make sure that I'm not seeing something that's not actually happening. So, okay. And then my other clarification question is going back to the variance, Tim. Am I correct in understanding that the porch is not coming forward? It's in its existing location, correct?
Correct.
And so the only go ahead.
So the porch is existing,
right,
and all we are really doing is covering the approach, and we are raising up the kind of the entryway up so that it creates a porch, which is a planning kind of standard that everyone seems to want, and we want, because it creates this kind of cool detail for the entry, and it's covered.
Yeah, it's nice. Okay, to cut to the chase, I can find support for it. I just wanted to clarify that what's tripping having to ask for a variance on the first floor front setback then is just because the porch isn't coming forward, you're just increasing the amount of cover over it. And so that's why it.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
And it's Ashley, the
Yeah.
homeowner, I exchanged emails with Michelle, the associate planner today, asking why the difference in the setback went from 10 feet, which is existing, to 9 feet in the sheet. And she was saying it was a question about how it was drafted. So there's no intent to encroach any further than is already there.
Okay, so if you can just clarify that in the drawings, Tim, and in the application when it comes back for action, thank you.
I definitely will.
Okay. Those are all my questions, thank you.
Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, to get to back to the second floor variance, I'm a little confused about the conversation between the renderings and the floor plan and the elevation, but did you look at any options for the second floor that didn't require a setback variance at the front?
Well, we started off with that, and there's a few items that we needed to kind of work with on the second floor, like having the 3 bedrooms on the top floor. We didn't want to extend the rear as much because we have a very large house on the left side of the property, and as you can see by the renderings are pretty close to kind of showing massing of the 2 neighbors. We just didn't want to infill the whole backyard. And then also, the street frontage and the street kind of context is a lot of the houses, as you can see by our surveyor, are very forward on the lot. There is definitely an option to do it that way, to lose 3 or 4 feet on the upstairs, but we would still be asking for a variance, just because the 20 foot is a lot more than what's there, and we are building kind of on the existing footprint. So the intent is this was the style we were looking for with the arched roof, and it kind of laying over the porch roof a little bit.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, hi, Tim. I just had a couple questions on the, for example, on the right side elevation, you've got a dormer and you've got, it looks like an attic window that's centered under the dormer. And then the window underneath that is off-centered, and the barge rafters on the left side one is longer than the right side one. Can you explain that to me? You've got a similar detail. You've got a couple of similar details on the rear elevation and the left elevation also. I'm a little confused as to what's drawing you that way.
Can you just reference which elevation, and then?
Well, okay, let's go to the left elevation, the upper floor window, the furthest to the rear. I guess it actually would be furthest to the front on the right-hand side on the second floor. And see the dormer there?
Yep.
Why are the barge rafters different lengths and the window not? I mean, typically I think you would see that window centered in that dormer.
Well, it's a design aesthetic. I didn't want to, we are trying to sort of mimic the style of the front, where we kind of have a flying left side. You also won't really see that ever straight on. And I think that'll create kind of a cool look when you're looking at it askew, from the street view. If that's a deal breaker, I can definitely make it,
well,
symmetrical.
They look a little out of balance to me. The front, I get it on the front because the left-hand rafter, as it comes down, it has a place to land, and the right-hand side of that dormer looks normal. Because the window is centered in there. So that
Understood.
tends to make sense, but the other ones look a little odd to me. I don't know. I'd like to get some feedback from the other.
We will take that under consideration. I think we can review that and come back to you.
Okay. And my other question is about the overall roof in general. You've got a big flat area in the middle, which tends to, because of the way the roofs are going up, it tends to make the house look a little bit more massive. And given there are some two-story houses in that block, there are also a lot of smaller single-story homes. And I'm just afraid how this is starting to look bigger and bulkier than a lot of those other homes. Did you look at just getting to a regular peak on the roof? I mean, usually you might see this when we have an upslope lot, but you're on a flat lot here. So I'm not sure
Correct, we're flat.
Why you ended up with a big flat spot in the middle like that, and kind of chopped off roof.
Well, we are trying to go for an English style house, with more transitional, and a lot of those houses do have a more peaked or a more aggressive pitch. It's also just a good spot to hide the mechanicals and not have any plumbing flues on the actual roofing, which kind of looks not great. It's also a great place to put the solar. We'll look into decreasing it by making the pitch a little bit less aggressive, but I think it really draws away from the look of what we're trying to achieve.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say anything, but my house is also pretty high off the ground. And so that created some challenges for us as we were trying to make enough clearance on the second floor.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Did we receive any emails or chat?
Sorry, Madam Chair, there are no chats for this item. I do not see any emails, and there are no hands raised.
All right. Then with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Vice Chair Toronis.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I think it's a nice design. I can generally find support for the variance application, I believe. And the reason I say that is not to be a smart aleck, Tim and Ashley, but just in regards to what's going to get finalized before us. And let me say what I can find support for, first of all, at the first level, in terms of the front setback, first floor. I think it's great to create more presence for that front porch. If it's not coming forward any further than the existing, if you can clarify that on the plans and the site plans, et cetera, and make sure that planner Michelle understands that, I think there's support. I could find support for it. It's an existing condition, and you're simply improving an existing condition and making it a better porch. In terms of the second floor setback, what I can find support for is because you're creating a gable that's sort of, it's an asymmetrical gable, and it's sort of on the left-hand side trying to spring from a first floor plate height with that sort of swooping barge on that side. I think I could find support for that, but what I think I would have an issue with, though, is if that second floor came forward even more, like you were suggesting, then I think it's sort of pressing the issue. I think what's happening right now is you're creating an asymmetrical gable, and then so I could find support for that. But then architecturally, in terms of the design review, I think it would help support that gable if it were an asymmetrical gable, but it had the windows that were aligned down the center of that gable. I think that's what strengthens an asymmetrical gable like that. If you take an asymmetrical gable, but then you start kinking over the windows as you work your way down from the top attic, vent or window to the second floor window to the first floor window, it kind of sort of defeats the whole idea of an asymmetrical gable. So and I think I'm zeroing in on what Commissioner Gall was saying as well. If I look at the right elevation and I look at that asymmetrical gable, I think it has a nice quirk to it. But I think that that works nicer or nicely as an asymmetrical gable, again, if you have that topmost vent or window, and then you have the second floor window aligned with it, then you have an asymmetrical gable that I think in traditional English style would be centered on that gable, but then would just be asymmetrical with one barge side extending off to a greater extent than the other. I think it's sort of what you're trying to do on the left elevation, again, with that asymmetrical gable, because there you've done the same thing where you've let the left-hand side barge extend down further, but there you've been consistent where you have that second floor window centered on that gable. If we could flip to the left elevation. Yeah, on that one there, if you look at that asymmetrical gable on the second floor, this one to me works because the window's centered on the gable, but you just let the left-hand side kink over a little bit longer and you get some playfulness with those gables. So I think those things can work if you just revisit them and resolve them. And then going back to the front elevation, resolve what's happening in terms of those knee braces. If it's just the one off to the side where you've got that little portion that stepped back, like is shown in your 3D drawing, I think that works really, really well. And I could support that version of an application for the front variances because of where the house is built relative to the rest of the neighborhood as an exceptional condition. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, thank you. I actually agree with Commissioner Toronto's quite a bit. I actually like the asymmetrical design. I think the roofs really work for it, and I really do like it. But I do agree with him on the window alignments will make it stronger. I hope that works on the interior as well. I know that that's a challenge, laying those things out and making them work. But I would support that as well. And I want to say that the 3D images are a huge help. This is a complicated house with a lot of things going on. And I think, Tim, you did a great job of bringing those 3Ds. They just need to, we just need to get them in alignment with what we're approving so that we can say, we like it and we can approve it. But huge help. So I appreciate you putting in that effort. And I feel very supportive of this project.
Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I like the project as well. And I would agree that the variance for the first floor setback is supportable, assuming the clarification with staff confirms that it's not increasing the encroachment. But I think the second floor variance could use some more study by the applicant. I'm not convinced that is supportable, and I think there's a lot of flexibility with this lot. I mean, it's a very deep lot, and there's still a lot of space to work with here. And in walking the neighborhood, I think it's a pretty big mix of two-story houses, many of which that look like they weren't subject to design review, and they have second stories that are very forward that I don't think really add a lot to the neighborhood, and also still has a lot of single-story bungalows, and to add a second story here is certainly supportable. But if we're going to do it in a way that doesn't conform with the second floor setback, I think it just emphasizes that the two-story nature of the house and doesn't really add to the neighborhood in a way that I think this design could. Thank you.
I thought I saw another hand up, but it must have gone down. I want to, I agree with some of what Commissioner Sargent just said. Tim, you're a talented architect, and you are a creative problem solver. We've seen you do things in the past, and the part of the front elevation that I think is weakest is the right side of the front elevation. And I feel like if you did study that second floor a little bit more and try to avoid that second story variance, front variance that, front setback variance, that you might actually improve that front elevation and maybe it would give you an ability to work with those windows that are not aligned on the top and the bottom. So obviously not here to tell you how to do your job, but I feel like that you could still explore that a little bit further. Commissioner Sargent.
I move we bring this back on the regular action calendar.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Vice Chair Taronis. Is there any discussion on the motion? Have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Vice Chair Taronis,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. The motion passes 7-0-0-0. This action is not appealable. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we're going to go to agenda item 9B, 1418 Bellevue Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to know any ex parte communications regarding this project?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, but I'll be recusing from this item.
Thank you. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant is proposing a lot split of the existing, excuse me, just drank my water too fast here. The existing 28,333 square foot lot located at 1418 Bellevue Avenue, zoned R4. The existing 4-story apartment building will be retained on the proposed parcel 1, and the proposed lot split would create a second 9,832 square foot lot on parcel 2. The proposal on the newly created parcel 2 includes construction of a 6-story, 15-unit residential condominium building with an enclosed at-grade parking garage. A cross-access easement is proposed in order to provide ingress and egress and vehicle circulation for both sites. The proposed project includes 2 units that would be affordable to moderate income households. As such, the project is eligible for a density bonus concession, as well as unlimited waivers, provided the waivers are necessary to allow the construction of a development at the densities provided by the density bonus law. The downtown specific plan and corresponding zoning do not provide for specific density limits. So in this instance, the applicant did a calculation to try to determine what a density would be for a so-called base project without a density bonus. This exercise is a little different than what we've seen in other applications, but it is intended to reflect the letter and intent of the state's density bonus law, and in particular to identify the base and bonus density for purposes of evaluating the requested waivers. As the outcome, the project proposes a total of 15 units, of which 2 units, representing approximately 13% of the project, would be affordable to moderate income households. The application requests a concession, which is allowed by right, for a building height of 71 feet 5 inches to the top of the 6th floor parapet and 75 feet to the top of the rooftop trellis without a conditional use permit. The applicant also includes a request for waivers to right side setbacks to the existing building, right and rear setbacks on the proposed building, lot coverage of the existing building, parking aisle width for both the existing and proposed building, off-site access for the existing building, and reduction in the number of parking spaces on the existing building to a ratio of 0.857 per unit. In summary, the following applications are requested for this project: design review for the proposed construction of a new 6-story, 15-unit residential condominium building, condominium permit for construction of a new residential condominium building, and density bonus concession for building height and waivers modifications of development standards to provide for the densities that would be anticipated under state density bonus law. The applicant has presentation prepared, but first, before hearing from the applicant, I'm available for any questions of staff.
Yes, Vice Chair Taronis, you have a question?
Yeah, Kevin, am I completely misremembering or something, but is there some requirement that we have for emerging lots of a minimum 10,000 square foot for any new lots or lot splits, or am I misrecalling, or does that not apply here?
So this is a little different in that that would be, for example, if it was a double lot that had been merged at some point and then is re-emerging. And often that happens when either there was a building on top of the property line or something like that. In this case, it's a lot split, so it's more like a subdivision. So it's kind of going the opposite way, where they're taking one lot and making it into two.
Got it. Okay, just want to make sure I'm not missing something. We're not missing something. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, and sorry, I'll just add, I got a prompt from the project planner. The new lot is 7,000 square feet minimum, so it does meet that.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name, and anything you would like to add about your project?
Hi, this is Philip Lesser. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, I try to put my video on here for you. It says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it. So anyway, but on the, okay, so it says start my video. All right, then let me give you.
We can see you now.
Okay, great. And I'll try to get you a decent background. Okay, hi there, Phil Lesser, calling all the way from San Mateo, California. I see Mr. Gardner smiling. Last time I saw him smiling was because he saw our architect, Matt Hollis, and I thought it was because there was a family relationship. We were at a pre-application meeting. When you see Matt Hollis, you'll see what I mean. But actually it was because they hadn't seen one another since architectural school back at Cal. So nice to be able to do something right here in our backyard. I have 5 members of our team with us this evening. I have Mr. Joe Michelucci, who's our geotechnical team member. He's going to speak to what you don't see there, what's underground. And while it's zoned as a liquefaction map, I think he can tell you what his results are and what we tend to do underground, including pits for mechanical parking. Above ground, we're going to be able to do some wonderful things with this very green part of Burlingame. And we've hired on this team Stephanie O'Rourke, whose office is just 2 blocks away from this site over on Howard Avenue. It's worked Burlingame for a long, long time. She's going to show you some really wonderful, not just ground level, but also roof level landscaping. We also have on the team this evening, Kevin Keelty, who's going to speak to the trees. And this is a very sensitive issue today with what happened, of course, yesterday in Washington Park. But we're not only going to make this a more usable area and a more delightfully looking.
I guess there's not pictures.
A safer area here. So Kevin Keelty.
I can hear everything.
Excuse me. So anyway, and our last member of the team that we have here, but he's certainly only last in mention, but not last in terms of importance, is David Blackwell. David Blackwell is perhaps the state's foremost state density bonus authority. And while you have a very talented city attorney who's quite versant with this, and I understand that you have quite a few state density bonus programs. I looked at this project 10 years ago and I couldn't make it work. The only reason that we're talking tonight is because of the state density bonus program. Here's a classic example of something that couldn't be built market rate, but now can be built, and it can include 2 affordable units. So this is the whole reason that this law went into effect. And I think we're all going to be able to hold our heads up high when this building gets erected. So with that, I would just like to point out that there is a 6-story structure already to the left of the existing building on this lot. And that goes back to, I guess, the latter part of the 1920s. The building that is on this lot was built in 1959. underneath that green patch, there's a swimming pool. So there's a buried swimming pool, which is coming out. And then of course, we're right next door to City Hall. So we're very, very sensitive to who our neighbors are. And in terms of outreach, I've been doing what I do for about 20 years. I've never done more outreach to my immediate neighbors than this one, because I have City Hall. I've been working with them for 2 years, and they know intimately what we're doing here. And I'm not going to steal the thunder from Matt Hollis. So with that, let me just go to the second slide real quickly, which is just a visual of what Mr. Gardner told you. It'll be a lot split. The new lot will be the sort of greenish side, and then the violet chartreuse, whatever you want to call it, on the other side. That'll be the larger lot. That existing building was built before there were storm drain requirements. So this is going to become safer because we're going to put a storm drain in here. Also, the electrical transformer is on the green side right now. That's going to be moved over to the chartreuse side, and the new transformer is going to go in on the green. And of course, like all new buildings, it'll be 100% electric. So it's going to be also eco-friendly in that regard. Turning to the next slide, that'll be my last slide. The context. So as I mentioned, we have different eras of buildings around us. We have different heights around us. We have different massings around us. So MH Architects was brought in because they're out of San Francisco. They know about shoehorning in to infills. And also they have a unique experience base in that they do a lot of work in the wine country. So they're very accustomed to, as they put it, bringing the outside in. And with that, I'd like to ask Matt Hollis to show you what he's been working on for the last 2 years. Matt?
Great. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much, commissioners, for hearing us tonight. And thank you, Phil, for the setup. This has been a wonderful project to work on. It's a very unique site, in some ways challenging, but I like to think that we've risen to the challenge. As you can see in this slide, and maybe if we advance to the next slide, there's one of the themes that we've been trying to work with is basically breaking down the vertical massing of the building into 3 parts. And the reason for that is that we've deliberately been trying to diminish the visual impact of a 6-story building from the pedestrian point of view, from the streetscape in general. You can see that the exterior wall surface is articulated with different finish materials and shifting wall planes. Our ground floor, meant to sort of scale to the pedestrian experience, is intended to be warm with the green wall, and it's ground floor as in being grounded. Our midsection is, we like to call it our floating midsection, where you can see that there's cantilevered balconies, and then the framed upper level has balconies that are literally framed by the structural grid of the greater building. The palette of materials include a metal clad structure with wood paneling, as well as glazing. We've tried to maximize our glazing throughout. And then there's landscaping. We have a front yard, which has been landscaped, and the landscape will fold up onto the front facade of the building at ground level. And in addition to that, there is 750 square feet of green common area on the roof that can be enjoyed by the residents. And it provides residents with additional exterior space besides their individual balconies. It anticipates potential for extended shelter-in-place events in the future. You can see that it's got a 4-sided glazed parapet to show off the roof plants. So in addition to having the green on the ground level visible from the sidewalk, we sort of bookend it vertically with more green. And the overall height of the building will be softened, and the elevator room will be effectively shielded from the outside. So there's a green layer on the top and a green layer on the bottom. Next slide, please. So again, you can see the glazed parapet, and behind it, the green strip, so that the facade is elegantly framed vertically. And then one thing that I'd like to point out in this slide is that currently there's essentially two driveways that are very close to each other, and one being for the existing apartment building and one is for City Hall. And one of the challenges for us was to essentially stuff a building in between. And I think one of the neat things, the happy accidents that occurs in this design process, is that we're able to diminish the effect of having these two driveways that are so close together and in effect break them up, so that it's a positive from that perspective. Next slide, please. So this is the rear of the building, and although most people are not going to see it from this angle, one of the things that we're trying to show off here is that there's an easily accessible ground level with storage for cyclists, storage for the residents to keep their bicycles and whatever other kind of personal items they'd like to keep there. We're trying to appeal to a demographic that will be increasingly environmentally conscious and seeking alternative modes of transportation. We've got a 5-foot wide access way, which promotes use of this dedicated ground level interior bicycle parking. There is also a shared fence that's designed for pedestrian safety and appearance. That's of course demarcating the boundary between our lot and City Hall. But the building is trying to strike a balance between issues of personal safety, which of course are very important for any homeowner, as well as the appearance of accessibility, approachability, transparency. So this mutually beneficial element, this green fence, is meant to be both security and be a green element, which contributes to the overall warm aesthetic of the ground level. And then I would be remiss if I did not mention in the very rear, which is slightly out of the camera angle here, but there is a green dog run in the back, and it allows residents the convenience for walking their dogs in an area immediately outside their front door, but minimizing the impact of additional pedestrian traffic and dog traffic on the public sidewalk. Next slide, please. So with this slide, again, we mean to basically emphasize the ground level experience. You can see that the entry is, the entry proper is offset, and that allows the opportunity to maximize the green frontage. The front yard, as I pointed out earlier, folds from a horizontal surface up to the vertical surface and offers an opportunity to truly ground the building and in some ways negate the presence of the ground floor altogether. And then the green wall continues, as I mentioned, with the bicycle parking along that 5-foot setback that on the side, further emphasizing accessibility and approachability and linking the pedestrian experience on the sidewalk and effectively extending the sidewalk. And in this sort of area off to the right here, that's where the entry is. And with the abundance of glass at the entry, you can see that the green wall actually folds into the entry. So this is very much intended as a blend of interior and exterior spaces, blurring the boundary between inside and outside. It's, I'll be candid, it's inspired by successful mid-century modern precedents, and the proposed design references an open floor plan and a pleasant, comfortable flow for both residents and just passersby. I think that concludes everything that I have to say. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, thank you. Question on mechanical. I'm looking at the rooftop and not seeing that. Is your mechanical equipment somewhere else?
Yeah, if we maybe advance the slide, please, to the supplementary drawings. Advance, please. Advance. There on, oh, I'm sorry, back one. So this is the floor plan of the ground level. And you can see the mechanical is accommodated on the that sort of triangular pie shape on the bottom level.
Okay, and that's gonna penetrate up where?
At the you can see at the vertical elements, the stair. Maybe if we go to the second, at all the
okay. Well,
yeah, at all the stairs and around the elevators, there's a poche, which is basically intended as a vertical chase.
Okay. And are you intending any solar opportunities on the roof?
We want to be able to accommodate it, but we are not planning on doing it initially.
Is that something that could be integrated into the trellis system?
Certainly, certainly.
I mean, I don't know how you're not going to have to do it. So I think it's something that better designed in than glued on top.
Definitely. Our approach was going to be that we were going to be able to, we were going to design to accommodate it, but we weren't necessarily going to install it immediately.
Okay. Noticing lots of glass and then thinking about where the solar gain's coming from. And so much of it, I think, is going to come around on the south side where the hallway is, and then west on that angled corner side. And then just lots of glass in all the units. Is there kind of an intent on how to treat windows, or is it going to be left up to the individual owners?
It would all be, of course, it'll be double pane, low E glass, clear. But we were planning to do shading treatments with concealed roller shades inside, and there would be basically it would be like a Meco shade or a Lutron system that has like a 3% diffuse quality about it, so that the views would still be mostly visible, but the solar gain would be cut down significantly.
Okay, great. Thanks for those. Those are my questions.
Vice Chair Taronis.
Thank you. Couple of questions. First one on parking. Now, I know we have a requirement that there be a space provided for deliveries. I'm going to assume that for the most part, Amazon, FedEx, et cetera, they're all going to park out on the street because they're not going to pull into the parking area, the parking garage, and then they won't back out onto the street. So my question is, down on the first floor, you've got an area for surface parking for one service vehicle and one standard parking space. So can we assume that that service vehicle, that might though be for, somebody coming for some service for one of the units, whether it's a plumber, electrician, et cetera, that space will be open for them? Is that the intent of that service spot?
Yes, yes. We're trying to reduce the amount of street disruption as much as we can. And within this very compact, somewhat challenged site, be able to absorb that intensity of use.
Okay, so then am I correct in assuming then that the driveway into this from the street, it won't have a secured gate, a lot like it does now, where, you can, easy access for a service vehicle getting in there as necessary?
I don't believe so. Phil, do you want to?
Actually, it would be great to have all of that, but what we basically have accomplished here, and I'm pretty proud of it, is looking at about 3,000 square feet of prime downtown real estate that's being used as a driveway. And what we're basically doing is we're using that same 3,000 square feet for 2 buildings instead of 1. All these years, it's only been used for 1. We're not asking for any waivers on the parking. We've met all of the parking requirements for the new building, on the new building, I should say. As you can see, surface parking in the back, and then we have the puzzle lifts, which is the exact same system you approved over on Lorton Avenue. So it's the same 3-level. So there are 2 banks of those. And then up front, we have ADA. If there is a resident who needs the ADA, obviously they're going to get precedence to utilize that space. But if not, we have that available. What's nice, the ownership that owns the entire parcel and owns the existing building has an on-site property manager. So we have that opportunity, and she does a tremendous job, and City Hall knows this because they're the next door neighbors. So they see, imagine Recology's coming out a couple of times a week, and all the other service vehicles that's required for a 49-unit building that keeps going in and out of there. So that's my background.
Okay, so I mean, I don't have an issue, with the parking concept and parking layout per se, but if you guys could think through before this comes back for action, whether or not you want to have a security gate out at that driveway, you would just have to make the argument that, and it sounds like you could cover it, make the argument that through your property management that's required on site because of your number of units, then that could be managed to where a service vehicle can have access when necessary and be able to park into that space that's available. So if you could address that when this comes back for action.
Again, I wish we could have that many competing users, but you can imagine, look at the number of surface parking spaces on the existing side. So you have a lot of people that live in the existing building that are going in and out on this driveway. And now you're going to add to that load with the new building to then put a gate there just for the, and I agree with you, we're going to see more and more Amazon and other type deliveries. And Matt anticipated that he has an enlarged mailroom, and he's going to have a special security system in the lobby to bring people in. We're just at a loss for, maybe having a colored curve for a certain time of the day and saying, let's have deliveries from 9 till 11 a.m., something like that. I think it's a whole new world for all of us. We're all trying to figure this thing out.
The deliveries are going to happen wherever they're going to happen. So, and I'm not arguing or lobbying for a security gate. I'm just asking if there is going to be one, and if you guys have thought it through. If there's not going to be one, then that's great. There won't be one shown on the plan. But if there is going to be one, I think it should be shown on the plan. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, I appreciate that, Commissioner. No, there will not be a security gate.
Okay. My other question is in regards to the affordable units. Have you decided which 2 will be the affordable units yet at this point?
The city gets to select. Again, I'll defer to David Blackwell, our attorney, on that. But I believe the city gets to select a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom anywhere on floors 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
David, maybe you can chime in on that.
That's
Well, I'm sorry, it's David Block. I have nothing to add, but that's really what we'll put in the affordable housing agreement. We'll identify the location and so on. So I don't think there's not a state restriction on that.
Okay, I'm just hoping to ensure that there is at least one of those be a 2-bedroom unit. So that's great. My other question then is in regards to the rooftop terrace, the open air terrace. Have you given much thought to a detailed layout of that? So to see how that works? I noticed, for example, on the sheet L4 from your landscape designer, it's not a real detailed layout. There's just one sort of large furniture grouping shown there, but I'm assuming that you're going to want to make it available for more than just one group. So when this comes back for action, if you could give a little attention to that roof terrace so we can see how that might lay out and how it can work, I think that would be helpful. Whether it's, you, Matt, or the landscape designer, if someone could give some attention to that, I think it'd be helpful to see how that's going to operate up there.
I think that's good direction, and we'll do that, Commissioner.
Okay. All right, I think that was the extent of my questions. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. One, did you do a shadow study in
No, we haven't done a shadow study. I'm not familiar with Burlingame. San Francisco, a shadow study usually is related to being next to a public space. And I guess we're next to City Hall. Is that what the concern is? The shadow will be cast on City Hall?
That and is possibly the buildings behind this address as well. There's some of the shorter buildings immediately behind, and the narrow component of the narrow side of the property. But yeah, it's a general question. If you did,
no, we have not.
Okay. And what was my second question? Sorry, blanking out on what my second question was about. I've forgotten. I'll ask again later. Sorry.
Okay. You did that right. Thank you.
All right. So do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
We do have 2 emails. Let me check first also. So nothing in the chat, but there are 2 emails. So let me pull those up.
All right.
The first is signed Thomas Tialdi, 500 Alma Road. He says, "Dear Planning Commission, please record my comment at your September 29th, 2020 meeting. I strongly oppose the project at 1418 Bellevue Avenue, zoned R4. The 6-story building is too tall for our neighborhood. It would detract from the appeal and value of neighboring properties." And again, that's signed Thomas Tialdi. And then there's one other email, which it's longer, so I need to, I'll read it at a regular pace for up to 3 minutes, which is what the typical public comment period would be. So let me kind of rig this up here. This letter is signed Donna Gall. And it says, "Dear Burlingame Planning Commission, I am writing to express my concerns about the proposed project at 1418 Bellevue Avenue. I am a property owner at 514 Alma Road and have lived at this address in the past and intend to do so in the future. I have multiple family members living at this address and I am writing on their behalf as well. The parking requirement is met for the new building, but at a cost of some spaces being removed from the existing building. Parking in this area is already taxed with more cars off the street, off residential parking. The close proximity to downtown businesses, City Hall, multiple new higher density condominium projects, apartment buildings, and live-work lofts already approved will further impact the on-street parking problem. Currently, during the day and again at night, all street parking is occupied. The impacts to the existing building on parcel 1 do not seem to be addressed. The density bonus for parcel 2 seems to be as it's being used for modifications waivers for the existing building on parcel 1. Parcel 1 will now have a greater than allowed lot coverage and a loss of 7 required parking spaces. Shouldn't these be variance applications? If these lots are to be split, shouldn't they be treated as separate? Are some of the units in the existing building becoming BMR units as well? If these new units are to be condos, what will the pricing be for the BMR units? The income threshold for the new owners is $114,000 annually. The math doesn't seem to work here. Remember that this is a residential neighborhood and as such is required to meet design guidelines in section 5.3.1 of the downtown specific plan, which states design buildings to maintain the general compatibility with the neighborhood and respect for the mass and scale of the adjacent buildings. This building does neither. The buildings in this neighborhood are at a much smaller scale than the proposed project. The building to either side, as well as across the street, are all wider than they are tall. The proposed building on parcel 2 is more than 3 times taller than it is wide, 20 feet 7 inches wide by 75 feet tall, and is also more than 2 times taller than the building on parcel 1, 75 feet versus 35 feet. The proposed building is out of scale with the neighborhood. The environmental information form states that the foundation will utilize pile driving. Remember that this is a residential neighborhood with many retired people in the area. Not only will this be tremendously disruptive to people in the surrounding residences, but to City Hall as well. Along with the noise, there will be vibration. There must be a better way to install a foundation, or perhaps it should be above grade. The letter from the applicant's attorney has done a good point in the density bonus law summary. It states that the purpose of the density bonus law is to encourage cities to offer bonuses. These bonuses are encouraged but not required. In short, I feel this project is asking for too many concessions. It will have far-reaching negative impacts on the neighborhood during construction and in the years to come. I'm not opposed to new building and or additional housing, but this project needs to be scaled back and fit in with the surrounding buildings and neighbors. And that is the timer at 3 minutes. So sorry, I read that quickly, but wanted to get it all in there. It is signed. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Donna Gall. Those are our 2 comment letters.
Kevin, can I just jump in real quick on that one? I know you all know this, but just as a quick reminder, Ms. Gall, she's speaking as a private citizen and a neighbor, and you can't give that any more or less weight than you would any other neighbor or member of the public, regardless of any personal relationship you have with her or any relationship that you have with Commissioner Gall. So just a reminder to apply the same weight as you would in any other public comment.
Thank you.
And let's see, let me just make sure we don't have any, I do not see any hands raised. So those were our 2 public comments.
All right, thank you. I see a lot of people attending this part of the meeting, so I'm just trying to give an opportunity if anybody wants to raise their hand and speak. So seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, so let me start by saying I fully support, residential infill projects such as this one. We need them, and I think it's a very clever solution for, a very awkward site that's been created. I'm struck by the words that the architect used about attempting to diminish the impact of a 6-story building on the neighborhood and creating an approachable project and an accessible project with a warm aesthetic. And I frankly don't find any of these things to be true. The building feels like an office building to me. It reminds me a great deal of Cesar Pelli's building in San Francisco, although sort of an infant version, or embryonic version, maybe a 560 Mission, with its external apparent black steel frame. I see it's called out as gray, but I don't understand the frame. I don't understand the aesthetic. It sort of does nothing to try to fit into the neighborhood, in my view. And I don't think that would be necessarily a bad thing, except I think it's a pretty aggressive building, personally. The frame, I don't understand the frame and infill. I understand the inspiration for mid-century modern. I don't see this as a mid-century modern building, but it feels very much like an office building. It doesn't feel like a residential building in a residential neighborhood. And I find that disturbing, frankly. You know, I want to like the building because I really support this kind of, as I said, this kind of infill residential project, but this doesn't feel like it fit. It fits to me. It doesn't feel compatible with the neighborhood. It feels aggressively incompatible, in fact. So the words and the object itself don't match for me. It feels, you know, I understand the notion that the architect wants to, you know, make the pedestrian experience a good one, but and I support that as a goal, but this box, it feels like a heavy, busy box hanging over your head at the pedestrian level. So, you know, I have a real problem with this building with regard to its compatibility to the neighborhood, and it's feeling like an office building when it wants to be a residential project.
Commissioner Camerado?
Yeah, I actually agree with Commissioner Loftus. So, you know, I walked around and looked at a lot of the beautiful buildings in the area, like the Arlington around the corner and the Chateau. And we have some amazing old, charming properties. And I know that you can do a modern, creative modern and complement what we have. We've seen it, we've tasted it in downtown Burlingame. But I feel that this building isn't quite doing that. It feels like it's just overbearing. And I'd like to see something a little softer. I'm not opposed to building on this site. I'm not opposed to the idea of having maybe a taller building, but maybe not as obtrusive as I feel that this one is in my thoughts, but something that may complement the building next door, something that's just a little bit softer and complementary.
Vice Chair Taronis?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Loftus and with Commissioner Camerado. You know, Commissioner Loftus was struck by some of the comments of the architect. What I was struck by was just the first and foremost idea of trying to wedge a project into this site or squeeze a project into this site. You know, I'm supportive of additional residential in the downtown area. We have to consider the density bonus as presented. I'm grateful for the addition of affordable units. And similar to what Commissioner Loftus says, I want to find support for the project. What I'm having difficulty with, though, is strictly from the design review standpoint. You know, I could make the findings for the density bonus. I could make the findings for the concessions, you know, that we're required to consider. But we're also required to consider the design review. And I'm having specific problems with section 5.3.3, development massing. For the project, residential areas within downtown Burlingame have a range of building heights, and so particular attention must be paid to the massing of new buildings to ensure an appropriate transition with surrounding development. So I'm having an issue with that, as well as 5.3.1 architectural diversity. There are 4 bullet points there that I'm having a hard time checking off. Design buildings to maintain general compatibility with the neighborhood, respect the mass and fine scale of adjacent buildings, even when using differing architectural styles. Now, that said, you know, I understand that there are transitional projects, and I understand that that neighborhoods are evolving. You know, I would not say that this building, you know, has to match a height of any maximum other buildings in the area. I can't go so far. I wouldn't go so far. You know, but when you have a project like this that's trying to wedge itself onto this portion of this property, I think that there needs to be a little bit more sensitivity to the character of the rest of the neighborhood. Like Commissioner Loftus says, it does look a bit commercial in character. I think it's handsome, you know, but I can't say it behaves and acts like a residential project at this point. You know, I know that there are tall buildings in this neighborhood, you know, so again, I wouldn't say that it has to be or can't be of certain height. I just have to make the findings for the design review as presented in our design review guidelines. So, I would like to see some additional pass or I think we need to see an additional pass at the architecture, at the character of the project, if we're going to try to, quote, wedge something onto a site like this. That said, if I, sort of zoom out and squint and look at the downtown area, or this neighborhood, yeah, I can see that there's sort of a vacant or missing tooth in this area. So something can happen there. And I think if it gets us additional housing units, gets us some affordable units, I think we should consider it. But I think that there just needs to be a little bit more sensitivity to the compatibility aspects of the design guidelines. Thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, I'm struggling with the massing part myself, and how narrow a lot it is to be able to put this size. I really wish we were looking at something that was actually combining the two buildings, or somehow taking, creating a bigger mass. Because I think that it's standing alone, it's standing tall, and a lot taller than all its surrounding neighbors. I'm also challenged by the parking waiver. We taking out 7 spots out of the lot, which would otherwise be serving parcel 1. And so the residents there are going to have fewer parking spots, and we're creating more density in the area. So street parking is going to be harder. So I find that difficult to swallow with that. I like the design aesthetic, but I agree with the other commissioners. It has a lot more commercial view than residential. And I personally think that those windows are, being as open as they're going to be very hot and a huge solar gain. And they're going to be challenging to live in, I think, especially in this kind of a residential neighborhood. So I'm struggling as well. Thanks.
And so I agree with my fellow commissioners as well. I, of course, are definitely supportive of the additional housing that we so desperately need in our city and in our state. And I like the design aesthetic of the building, but not necessarily in this location. I am concerned about the extent of glazing, making one feel like they're living in a fishbowl. Around shorter, smaller buildings in the neighborhood, feeling very much on display. I too was a little struck by the words chosen by the architect in his presentation, because I feel like the very dark outlining of this charcoal gray or black material isn't looking inviting, or doesn't look like it's trying to fit in the neighborhood. And it can fit in some other neighborhood, but not necessarily this one. I too, like Vice Chair Taronis, want to quote some elements from our Burlingame Downtown Specific Plan or Design Guidelines, specifically 5.4.1 with the land use transitions from kind of low to medium to high density massing structures. And I feel like with City Hall immediately to the right is a couple story, 2 or 3 story building, quite low profile on an expansive lot, and with the shorter properties immediately behind this one and to the left, the adjoining property, that we have some issues here to contend with in terms of land use transitions, as well as 5.4.2, the shadow impacts that I mentioned earlier. Have concerns about this narrow sliver of a tall building and its impact on the neighborhood. So I want to support the project and appreciate the aggressive nature in trying to accommodate and fit in a number of units on this property. But I think you'll need to explore this further in taking our comments into account. Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, there's not a lot I could add. I agree with everything that's been said. I'm very supportive of the concept of the project. I think this is a great place to add housing, and I think the density bonus concessions are compelling. I think one thing that we haven't really mentioned that makes me a little bit uncomfortable is the setback to the rear. There's an apartment building back there that clearly is non-conforming because it looks like it's within about 10 feet of their rear setback there. But I think that needs to be considered more. I was intrigued by Commissioner Schmidt's comment about looking at ways to perhaps add on to the existing building on this parcel rather than creating a separate property. I think that might help the compatibility here. So I think that might be worth exploring more. So I move we bring this back on the regular action calendar.
I'll second.
Was that Vice Chair Taronis that seconded?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Vice Chair Taronis. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yes.
I would ask that when this comes back for action, if we could get some interpretation from either planning staff or the city attorney or both in regards to the impacts on parcel 1. In other words, I understand that we have to consider the density bonus and the concessions and waivers for this parcel 2 because there are affordable units that are being provided. But I'd like to have a clearer understanding of the impacts on parcel 1 and what we're having to consider there based on the idea that I assume that there are not affordable units that are on parcel 1. So if we can get a clear understanding from staff and city attorney on those impacts on parcel 1 from this project and what we are required or not required to consider in terms of those resulting impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. May we have a roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Vice Chair Taronis,
Aye.
and Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0-1-0. This action is not appealable. We'll move on now to agenda item number 10, commissioners' reports. I believe there are no commissioners' reports tonight. And so we'll move on to agenda item number 11, directors' reports.
We have one FYI 1453 Bernal Avenue, FYI for proposed change in exterior material to a previously approved design review project.
Would anybody like to pull this FYI? Okay, so is there anything to report from the city council meeting on September 21st?
The most significant thing from that meeting, and we on planning staff are trying to figure out how to lay it all out in a way that people can follow. There's been a tolling of expirations for planning and building permits. So to kind of go back in time a little bit, there was already an extension of permits that were expiring this year due to complications with the pandemic to provide projects more time. So pretty much any permit that was expiring between March and September, and you'll perhaps remember this, the Planning Commission had looked at this, was automatically extended to the end of this year. Realizing we're still in the pandemic and that a lot of projects need extra time beyond the end of this year, the City Council has done a slightly different approach where they're tolling the permits, and that's basically what it does is it stops the clock. So we have to kind of put together extension versus tolling, but if you think of the clock just stopping for a year from September 21st, 2020 to September 21st, 2021, and then we can look at each timeline and see kind of how it plays out. And that includes projects moving forward as they're approved. The clock is still stopped until next September. So it will provide additional time to all projects in some shape or form, but particularly with projects moving forward as they get approved, that what's left of the year will be less than a full year. So everybody will get more time, but the amount of time varies with each application. So like I said, we're trying to figure out how to, is this going to be a diagram or a flow chart, or how to kind of explain the math here. But should any of anyone approach you, or should any of your own projects be subject to timelines or expirations of permits, talk to staff and we can help you figure out what are the applicable dates. The intention is just to provide everybody with more time. We realize everything's harder to do right now. Supply chains are disrupted, and projects just generally need a little more time to move forward.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you, everyone. If that is all for the evening, I would like to adjourn this meeting at 8:54 p.m.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.